Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking with Talent. This week, I have Patrick Ryder with me, the fabulous director, writer, creator, all-round artist. So welcome, Patrick, and thank you for joining me this week.
I like that intro. If I can have that intro everywhere I go.
I'll pre-record it for you.
If I can get my wife to do that, that'd be great. Yeah, just every time I enter a room, just have that. That's good.
So thank you so much for joining me. We're going to start off because actually you've had an incredible skill set from the films you've created to the poster art and your graphic design, because that's actually where you kind of began with your career in creating these posters, and they do look phenomenal. And I'll put some up in the middle here so you can see them. How did you get into that? Was that sort of your focus at the beginning? And
I come from a big family. And my entire family are very artistic people. And my mum did a lot of painting. And I actually started out as a graphic artist. Like I did a lot of pictures for sort of comic book type things. And I sold them at Forbidden Planet. Created these sort of monster creature paintings and stuff and sold them. But there wasn't a lot of money in it. And as the years went on and technology picked up, people were less interested in that as a way of creating art. So I taught myself Photoshop, got it and just learned it, and then I started at a company where I started junior designer, middleweight, whatever, heavyweight, and then I ended up being head of production for this company, where I literally do all the posters, all the artwork for. Well, I've done thousands of films now, posters, and it's kind of it's a normal thing for me now. Doing this, like it doesn't seem, if someone tells me what they want for a poster, I can pretty much do anything now, because I've been doing it for about 15-16 years now. So,
exactly. They really are stunning. And you also do a lot of now I'm sure there's a correct way of phrasing this, but drawing. I mean, I wish I could draw like that. I've always wanted to be able to get that sort of realistic drawing, but I've always ended up with anime is how my realistic drawings end up in anime.
For every picture that I get right, there might be a picture that doesn't quite work out. So there will be pictures, and those pictures in themselves take hours to do. And it's not so much the sketching; it's the starting off, it's the details to get it right.
And
the aspects and stuff.
Do you have like a set routine when drawing? Because in terms of, I know some people find outlining your image first, and truth be told, I don't know that much about drawing. It's one of the things I've always wanted to try and learn, but I've always had that block going. I can't do it now, can't do it then. So I mean, terrible defeatist for you.
But I think drawing and artistic things, I think everyone's got it in them to do. I think a lot of the time people try it and then they go, I'm no good. But if someone sat down and they just kept practicing, it's like anything. People, you would get good, and you would find a way to create art from that. That's brilliant. And for anyone looking to start out, have you got any sort of just beginner tips aside from just keep on getting as in drawing or
for drawing for now,
and just keep practicing with drawing, really, I'd say, and research artists that you like, and look up drawings that you like and images of things you like, and just keep trying out new things, because it took me years again to get to that point. It wasn't an overnight thing that I just drew and it came out like that. That's been my whole life since I was a kid doing those. So.
Awesome. How did you find the move from, I guess, drawing on paper? There's several layers to this. Drawing on paper and with a pen or pencil, to a mouse or even a trackpad. When you started, I don't know actually when sort of drawing pads digitally became a thing. I know they've sort of become huge in the last few years, but how was the move from going from your sort of, the things that we've been using for decades and for eons, to this new tech era where you've got to almost do it with a mouse? How was the difference there?
I mean, this might shock people, but I've never actually used a digital pen for anything in my entire life. I'm quite old school.
Yeah.
of just the mouse and the Mac and that kind of thing.
Right.
It's a different art form doing Photoshop to doing to actually drawing something. If you are using a digital pen, then it's a lot more similar in the way that you do it. On Photoshop, a lot of the time it's about the effects and about the grades and about the layers, and it's like a collage basically.
Right.
So you build it up from the bottom up, and then you move things around until it works.
Yeah.
Whereas drawing, you draw the thing, and if it doesn't quite work out, you might have to start again.
Yeah. Well, that's
there's a back tool on the Photoshop which I like. So. Yeah.
Control Z.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant, and I think it's such a fascinating creation, and it's quite often something that we don't give enough time to. Certainly when it comes to filmmaking, is you get these grand visuals on the screen, the departments and the amount of work that goes into, for instance, creating the poster, such as yourself, and creating the visuals for various different publications that are going to go out for advertisement. And it really is the amount of time dedicated to creating these promotional visuals, if you will. Fantastic.
I didn't realize when I started out doing these posters how important they were to the
Yeah.
film industry. Obviously, I always saw myself as being, I mean, I've got into directing and all those things as it went on, but I've always at the beginning, I saw art as being maybe the lesser important thing of a project, because everyone's done the hard work and then they just stick the poster on at the end.
Yeah.
But I've realized in the industry, actually, it's the most important thing, because when you're selling this to distributors or you're selling it overseas or to Cannes or wherever, the thing that they see first of all is the poster. They don't watch the film. They might see a trailer for it, but the poster is the thing that will sell it, and the tagline and the mini synopsis, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's all you've got to work with, and that it's made
opened my
eyes. It is. I mean, I'm actually working with Rachel Warren now.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And RWI Films, we've joined up and we're creating poster artwork, and you get clients come in and they're such lovely people and they've got such important projects to them that they've created, and you can't let them down.
No.
What they want as a visual for the poster has to be as good or better than the film that they've created.
Yeah. Do you ever get to watch the film, or do they give you their vision of it and that's enough?
I've had all sorts, really. I mean, I've had people where they've got no images, nothing to give me, and I've got to create something from nothing, which is always interesting. And then, like, we just had a client recently who gave us the entire film. They've given us a Google Drive of photos. They discussed the film with us, and that really helps.
Yeah.
That gets you into the mindset, and you understand what you're trying to get across with a poster then, rather than a generalization of the genre that it might be.
That's brilliant. And with the, for instance, taking the Star Wars films as an example, and you always have there's always the sort of headshots of people looking off in different directions, the lightsaber beam coming out the top, and that's quite a sort of it's used a lot, that image of the sort of main characters looking off in different directions. Are these photos that you personally have to take, or are they stills from the movie that's like, or stills from a photo shoot that the production company have actually done for you, or do you have to do them yourself?
If it's a bigger film, or if they've got the budget for a camera person to be on set, then obviously we get a whole set of these professional kind of photos, and then we get the other photos, the kind of screen grabs. But a lot of the time the screen grabs, because people film in 4K and HD and these quality, they're big enough and they're easily good enough to use. And sometimes they give me the trailer and I just go in and I find the images and I screen grab them and take them out and use them, and as long as they give me a breakdown of what they kind of want.
Yeah, no, of course.
Just picking out any old thing. As long as if they've got main characters and they've got some scenes that they feel are important for the poster, then I take those.
Right. That's brilliant. I didn't know that at all. I always assumed that there would have been a separate photo shoot where they get the correct angles for the poster. But
So
that must
sometimes
be
you notice that there'd be quite a lot of posters. In fact, there's millions of posters like this, where even for a big film, they didn't, for some reason, they didn't have someone on set to take those photos. So they take a head of the character from the film and they drop it onto a body that they found from somewhere else, and they use it. Maybe not so much for the Avengers, but there is action films I could show, posters for that they've basically just dumped a head onto a body of someone else,
that
just
explains
because
quite a lot, actually.
they needed a body, because maybe when they had the screen grab, it was only from the neck up. So someone has to build an entire body for that person. And I've done it. I've had to do it for films. So I know what it's like.
Yeah.
You don't want to do it. Because then there's a whole thing about the lighting and the proportion and
of course
everything. And it's better just to get the photo from the beginning.
Speaking of lighting within this sort of poster, do you find do you have to create artificial light on the image of the person, so then it's all from one place? Because obviously if you're getting photos from different parts of the film, obviously it could be from a darker scene, that could be from evening, morning, midday, and I imagine it could look quite out of place having this variance on light across the entire poster. So do you have to kind of brush them all then with the same, I guess, lighting technique, if you will?
Yeah, you got to match them. So if one's very bright on the side of the face, you might want to darken that down, and if there's one that's too dark, you want to line it back up. And then things like filters come in. Color filters help you to match all the faces together. And then if you get any other images, they've got to kind of match that as well. And sometimes what you can do is, I've done it on, I did it on the Star Wars, the first one of the new Star Wars. I've forgotten the name of it now. Force Awakens. Yeah, that's the poster that most people say if they want a poster designed, that poster crops up. They go, I want this. And you go, okay. But there's a technique where you can kind of do a color wash to the poster, and then you do another color wash over the top, and you pull it away from certain areas. So it means you get a blue light to the side of the face and a red light, and you can, it allows you basically to mess around with color, then colored light that wasn't there, but you can make it.
Photoshop it seems like a huge void to jump into, because there's so much you can do. But it's brilliant.
Well, that's why I created the little lessons online, because a lot of people ask me, how do you get rid of an object, or how do you cut round hair from somebody easily? And it's really easy when you show someone the technique, because the technology is improved. When I started out, it was zooming in with the eraser tool around the hair, whereas now there's crop tools where you just crop around and it finds all the hair strands, and then it does it for you, and then you can go into a second screen, get rid of the background, and keep the hair.
That's brilliant. Wow. That is a lot easier than being on paint and like
the old days.
From your poster art, what actually led you into then creating your own films and then sort of writing, producing, directing? Because you've now had a lot of films under your belt, and I was at the screening of The Code. I had to leave very quickly afterwards as I had an acting class, but I did get to view all your films, and they're phenomenal. They're really fantastic films.
Oh, thank you.
But what led you into the I guess the world of directing and writing and producing?
As a kid, I loved film, like love films. And my brother Steve, who's in Australia now, but when he was here, he would always go down to Blockbuster, and he'd come back with a pile of films, and he'd say, we're going to watch this, and just watch loads and loads of films. And I loved films. And when we went on holiday, I'd be sitting in the car imagining, how I'd make my film, and I'd do trailers for it and all this stuff. And when I started at this company as the designer and the head of production, they do filming for fitness programming.
Okay.
And I was invited along as a cameraman one day, so I didn't know what I was doing, but I went along. And I went on to lots of these shoots. I learned how to operate a camera. Then I was trained as an editor in the company as well. And then I felt, well, I can film, I can edit, I can design, and might as well try and write something, see if we can create something. And the first film that I made it wasn't the best, like most people's first attempts, but it got put into a competition at the House of Commons and it won.
Right.
And I got to do some work experience at Universal Pictures from that, and
oh wow, nice.
And then from that we did more films, did some dance films. Madonna picked up on one of our films and emailed us through a company that we just thought it was a fake, put back in the junk mail.
That's a scam.
And it kept, every film that we did seemed to grow and we seemed to do better at, and we learned from our mistakes every time. And then it just went on really from that point.
That's fantastic.
About 20 films, about 20 films, 20 short films, I think it was.
Nice.
Yeah.
And now you've just embarked on your first feature film. So what's the name of your upcoming film? It's
called Lore, which is Lore.
Okay.
And it's a horror anthology.
Right.
It's a very clever script that I joined up with James Bush, who's an amazing director in himself. He did Cannibals and Carpet Fitters, and he's so good. And we basically, I guess we sat down and we just discussed. We wanted to work with each other for a long time, and then we found this project and we sat down and we came up with these little ideas for it, and it all gelled. It all fit together. And then Adam came on as a producer, and then who's been amazing, who's just lifted the whole project and just got us to a place where we can start shooting. So
that's fantastic.
It's good.
So big, long process. Were you involved in the writing process at all? Or have you come on just as a director for this?
Yeah, no. I've written most of the script, but it's been based on a lot on what James and me have discussed, and James has been pivotal in that happening. And it's an interesting project because I'm directing, because it's made up of these four smaller stories within a big film.
Right.
I'm directing one, James is directing one, we've got another director for the third one. We're both, me and James are doing the fourth, and then me and James are doing the rest of the film outside of that as well. It's a different way to make a film. But it's been we were on set a few days ago, and it was mind-blowing what these people can do. Scott Coulter, who's the DOP, just mind-blowing what the guy could do with light and the cameras. I mean, you talk about being an artist with light, but there's something else when you see someone creating that in an environment in front of you.
There's something beautiful about when a film set comes together and you see everyone doing their thing to then just make this like harmony for when, I guess, you call action. It really is stunning, and it's definitely an experience that's like no other. But it feels like another step. It feels like I guess some people start out in features instantly, so it's something they just jump into and they just do it. And I've got the fullest respect for people who do that. I don't know how you do it, but you do. Whereas I came from a different background, where from shorts, I think I've learned a lot. I've learned what not to do in films most of the time, and it's helped guide with this film to know that what can be achieved and what can't be achieved, and what we can do for a project. So it's exciting and it's good. Yeah, absolutely. No, we're looking forward to seeing that. Just, I guess, backtracking slightly, as you directed The Code, which my brother was in. So you watched my brother there.
He was amazing, by the way.
He was amazing. Now The Code is a story from, it was the Second World War, was it not?
Yes.
Was this actually a story that you knew existed, or is this a sort of plausible circumstance creation?
It's based very loosely on a code or a cipher that was found on a German. So there is a tiny bit of truth on that, but the actual film itself is completely fictional. The characters are everything that happens in it, but it was based on that idea of finding a German soldier who's got this piece of information and how important he might become, or that might become, that little piece of paper could be the thing that changes the war. So it's a much harder way to make films if you're going to set it in a period, because you have to get that right. It's easier, obviously, if you set something modern day, you can set the rules to that yourself. Whereas the World War II film, everything we had to get the finest detail of the planes and the guns and literally people everything, even down their uniforms. And I find it fascinating when I watch programs that are set in eras where they bring you into that world. I mean, I'm watching The Queen's Gambit at the moment, and the set design and the costumes, and it's staggering, really.
They really know what they're doing.
So it was a learning curve again with that. I mean, I'd love to do a World War II feature, but at the moment I feel the horror feature is good.
So that's enough for now.
We go there first,
No, that's brilliant. And now forgive me, was it Crimea was your film before The Code? Or
Chimera,
Chimera. And how was the process? Because that was a fantastic sort of almost psychological action thriller, and had twists and turns which I wasn't expecting, certainly viewing it. How was the process there? Were you the writer on that film?
So in a way, it was a similar writing process to the feature that we're working on. Whereas me and James sat down and we broke down the story. There's an actress who's in that, Nadia Lamine, and it's a close friend of mine. And we sat down in a coffee shop and we discussed doing this project that was about what it is. And we wrote down the ideas on napkin for that, just a napkin in the coffee shop. And then I went home and wrote sections of it. But ultimately, my wife's a better writer. So she normally I do a first draft, and then she comes in and she really fills it out and adds so much to it. And then that script was interesting because then Nadia came in and added some bits, and then we tweaked some bits, and we wanted to make a film that kept people guessing. Really, a film that you can get halfway into a film and it's not what you expected. You can just turn the table and people weren't expecting that. And it was nice to make a film like that because it worked, I think, for a project. And that was down to the actors in it, really,
I always find it interesting when you're writing a creation where you're having almost, it's the same storyline, but you need to view it from the audience's point of view. And it's almost like a separate storyline going, now what do I want the audience to see at this point? And their expectation versus and then I find you have to rewind and almost rewrite it, but in a different mindset, going, no, this is actually what's happening, but that's what we want them to think, and it can get very confusing.
It was interesting, and obviously basing a film on a massive twist meant that when we did the promotion for the film and the trailer, we actually couldn't show much of the film because visually characters changed what they look like. And it became nearly impossible to tell anyone what the film was about because they would say, oh, what happens, and you could only show the first 5 minutes because the rest of it's obviously everything alters and changes from that point onwards. Which was interesting to try and promote a film by not talking about it.
Can't tell you what it's about.
It's just really great,
just go and see it.
Whereas the horror that we're working on, it's fascinating to make a film where you're showing things, the audience catch glimpses of things, but the characters don't. And a lot of the time, that's when horror works best, where you've seen something, something's down that corridor, but they don't know it's there yet. And one of my favorite scenes in the film recently was A Quiet Place, where the nail comes out of the step. And early on, I don't going to spoil the film, but there's a nail on a step, and the camera focuses in on this nail sticking out of this step. And scenes and scenes later, you're like, but why did it show me that nail? And then later on, she's rushing down the stairs, and then you remember the nail. And it's a great play on a visual thing to keep the audience on their toes. It's good.
I think I'm not a personal fan of horror films.
Neither am I. I don't actually like. I'm not a massive horror fan.
However, I think if it's got a good story, I mean, there's it's very much stuck with me, but I'm not a fan of it. I'm going to put that out there. But I saw The Orphanage, which is The director has escaped me right now, but it's a fantastic.
Oh, Del Toro, isn't it?
That's the one. Yeah, incredible storyline. Like ruined
Mm.
me because I don't like horror films, and I completely. But as a story, because I think the fascinating part about it, and it's that expectation versus reality. I'm not going to spoil anything, so it is. Even if you're not a fan of horror, I would recommend seeing The Orphanage because it's an entire film where actually, if you sat down and go, "Well, this is what happened," nothing happens, and it's all suggestion. And the power of suggestion in horror films is what I think it's most of the horror is letting the audience's mind wander down the path you want them to wander down and see what
Yeah.
they find there themselves, which is, I'm sure, an art form in itself and quite exciting to be part of now.
No, we had it was Haunting of Hill House, which was the influence to the first part of the film of the feature we're working on, that really guided me on the look of the film. And we've actually just filmed in this great big manor house, great big dark wooden staircase,
Nice.
and the house almost becomes a character in itself because
Yes.
if you're sort of there, the creaks of the house and the light of the house gives it kind of a mood each time that you're in it, and it's fascinating to do.
Have you had a moment yet where out of the film things have just got a bit too creepy within the place? Like, did the manor house...
I stayed in the house. So me, Adam, the producer, and James, the co-director, we actually stayed in the house for the time that we shot in there.
I wish you didn't.
It was fine. It was fine, actually. I mean, my room was my bedroom was actually sort of doubled up as a makeup room for the.
Do you have any sort of advice to writers who, because you've now got like a plethora of different genres under your belt? Do you have advice for doing a certain one? Is there a structure for writing horror, or is it pretty much the same?
Horror is slightly different from other genres. I mean, comedy, I would say, is the hardest, and I have tried comedy, and it's very subjective what people find funny or not. Whereas I feel like horror, if you can build to a certain place where people understand, the nature of the thing, and they get into a mood and a setting of it, then that's the art form. If you can get someone to sit down and be engaged with the characters, because I've watched a lot of horror where you don't really care what happens to the characters.
No.
Whereas this, we've made sure that you do care about the characters, and you don't want them to go down there. You don't want anything to happen to that character, and you don't want that to happen. And you've done your job right. If people are feeling like that and they're silent in the cinema and they're watching it, then it's working.
Well, yeah, hit a pin drop.
Yeah, exactly.
I find a lot of, although I'm not a fan of them, I've seen a fair few horror films, but a lot of them, I think, lean on old tropes. And you're right, when you don't care about the characters. There was a friend of mine, we went to see, it's where you go to cinema, but you don't know what you're going to go and see. Scream Unseen. But I thought he said Screen Unseen. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go and watch possibly the next Marvel movie. And I sat down this horror film. I was like, okay. And it was this people on a campsite who just got slaughtered, and you go, why? What was?
I think that's it's like a get out of jail card. I think when people to do that in films, I always feel like it's a cheap scare. And I'm not saying if you put lots of gore into a film, then because this film will have it's because it's got different stories in it. Some of them have got a different feel to them. They won't be like the first one we done. But I do feel like you need to see that there's effort being put in on screen. You need to see that people have cared about what they were trying to make, rather than just rush it out and try and scare someone that way, because it might not work.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned that your feature film is actually an anthology. Now, is this kind of like you're doing, for instance, you said it was 5, wasn't it? 4 or 5? And
it's 4 films.
4 films. And is it 4 shorts within the same film, basically? Almost. Okay, nice.
Yeah. So they're
like an American Horror Story roots.
Yeah, but we've tried to make sure that each one is going to have a different feel and a different look. And I mean, I can't discuss some of the stuff in it, but it makes me smile, some of the ideas we came up with, because something I learned, Ridley Scott said something when he did Alien. He was like, if you're going to put a creature in a film, make sure it's memorable. If you're going to put a baddie in a film, make sure that he's memorable. Don't just do the lazy way of doing it. And in this film, we sat down, and the key thing was, whatever the threat is, it's got to be something that people haven't seen on screen before, and it's inventive and it's different, and people don't forget it. They walk away and go, do you know what? It definitely had, that, this, and that. So
that's brilliant. Yeah. And so obviously still only just hit production at the moment. So when, like, have you got a rough ballpark figure for when this might be released? It's fine.
We're hoping to film some more of it early next year.
Yeah.
Obviously, due to COVID and lockdowns, we're very careful about the set, and everyone's being tested, and temperature tests and masks and all these things. So that it makes the process a little harder for everyone. Get the film made, but we're determined to get it made. So we're hopefully looking at March, April-ish.
Okay.
If things go to plan. If they don't, then it might move a little. But
that's fantastic. Well, I'm sure we'll all be keeping our eyes peeled, and do let me know as well when it does sort of get close to release date, and I'll obviously post on here as well and let people know that that the film is close to coming out.
Well, I'm getting footage tomorrow. I think I'm getting footage back, so I won't be seeing my kids for a couple of hours.
Well, that's true.
Obviously, they can't see it. They moan that I don't make films for kids, but one day again.
Yeah, we'll do an animated horror film at some point.
Yeah, one day. That's it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, mate. And it's been a pleasure having you on. And everyone stay tuned, and we'll post around March with some updates. And everyone out there, stay safe and stay creative, and we'll see you next time.